The 1983 firearm deer season drew to a close yesterday, and now we have a lot of tall tales about the ones that got away, the things we could have done, the things we should have done. But here's a fellow who did everything right. John View from Auburn Heights. He says he has a pretty big rack here. He says it's how many points?
23.
23.
23 points.
We're going to count them up in a minute, see how he stacks up. This could be the biggest buck of 1983. We'll talk about that, so you stay tuned. It's Thursday night, time for Michigan Outdoors. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's another one. Oh, 13. We're not going to count this one here?
No.
That one, no. Okay, 13 on one side, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. I'd say it's at least a 23-pointer. It could have gone, well, could have maybe gone 24 points. Looks like that tine right there would have matched the other one.
Right.
There's another broken one right there that would be 25. What about, well, I don't know about that.
This one here.
There we got one there. Maybe would have made it 26. On the back side, well, who knows? This could have been a 27, 28 pointer. You lucked out. Or did you luck out?
I don't know. I really don't think so.
You don't think? Tell me
I know
about
I was
this.
going to get a big buck.
How'd you know?
Well, I've been bow hunting the area for the last 2 years, and my brother and me both have seen the 14 point in there.
Mm-hmm. Is that what you were hunting for?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's clarify. This was an opening day buck,
Right.
November 15th, and you were hunting Oakland County.
Right.
Oh, boy. A lot of people are going to want to know where you got this. And you say there was 14 point in the area. Had you seen this one before?
I might have seen this one, but it was a long ways off, and I was up in my tree stand, and I really didn't get a good look at it. It was going through the brush, but it looked like a pretty good sized rack.
So what was your opening morning strategy?
Well, I got out there, and I had planned an area. I sat in a picker bush, had it all
Thorn
carved
apple,
out,
yeah.
right. And I was facing the area I wanted to, where the deer usually come out of. Well, the wind was to my back, which was a bad advantage for me.
Yeah, well, the weather on opening day wasn't the greatest.
Well, my brother-in-law and his buddy come in another field behind me and kicked this one right out to the side of me.
So it didn't come where they normally come from. It came with the wind?
No, it came, you're right, with the wind.
How far away was he?
Let me see. Oh, about 15 foot.
15
20
feet
foot.
away? Well, I tell you, seeing a rack like this 15 feet away would be a real thrill. What other deer have you gotten in Oakland County in the past year? Well, you've hunted 8 years? You got a 9-point win?
That was just last year.
Last year. Well, John, I tell you, this is a tremendous rack. It may be the biggest one in the state. We don't really know. We're going to measure these next week on our Big Buck Night. You're going to be here?
Right.
John View will challenge everybody with his Oakland County buck. John, congratulations on that. We'll see if we can't put you on the top next week. Very good. Well, what do you think about that, Bob?
I think that's great, but I think I'd be real surprised to see a 23-pointer walk out in front of me. There are going to be some surprises, too, in the next couple of weeks. Governor needs to name some more people to the Natural Resources Commission, and of those appointments, I'm only pretty sure about one of them, and that would be former State Senator Kerry Kammer out of the Clarkston area, a hunter and a fisherman, friend to sportsmen. There is some likelihood that he will be appointed. As far as the other two, well, I really don't know. There are all kinds of names, probably 100 names floating around right now. Some great news from yesterday. The new Indian negotiations with the Department of Natural Resources and the governor were started yesterday. From all reports I got this morning, the tone of those events were quite upbeat. They don't expect to solve all of the issues, the major issues right away, but they made some good progress yesterday. And while this season, really, this deer season that ended yesterday ought to have been called on the account of bad weather, it was not quite that bad in the preliminary data of the deer taken in Michigan. Now, in southern Michigan, the deer count seems to be down just a little bit, just slightly, probably because of the bad weather. In the northern part of the Lower Peninsula, the buck count was just slightly down from last year, the number of bucks taken, but the deer overall count will be down substantially because the antlerless permits were cut back, and the UP appears just about the same. So really not a bad season, even though the weather was just terribly poor.
I think it was a bad season, Bob. From my own personal point of view, it was a disaster. There were some good days for hunting. There really were. I'm sure there were because I heard about them.
Yeah, I didn't.
But I was
go
never
on
out
any
of
those.
No, I hunted the fronts. and it just didn't pan out. I didn't even see a deer. And I went out morning and evening around here. Bow season, December. Pray for good weather.
Okay.
Now, we're going to get blasted, folks. We got to put on our flak jackets.
Get the flak jackets on.
Because
Here
we got
we
our
go.
mailbag here, and we have a couple of people who have written in about this particular issue. They were very upset with us.
That's right.
Go ahead, Ed.
Some hot letters here. From Hamburg, up until now, I have enjoyed your show very much. However, I was shocked to see that on November 17th show, you interviewed 2 deer hunters who killed their deer illegally on opening day. The 2 hunters openly admitted, even boasted, of killing their deer prior to the 7 a.m. legal shooting time.
So I got up this morning and went out to a little spot south of Crystal Falls and set up there, and about 6:45 this buck came in. And I thought it was a four-corner first, and I shot, and when I found it, it was a spike.
What time in the morning did you shoot him?
It was 6:30, right on the button. And I spotted him about 6:20, and he was just fooling around.
I can't see how on one hand your show stresses hunter safety, then turns around and praises hunter success of those who blast away with a high-powered rifle in a darkened woods. I feel that you and your staff should reflect on what you have done. An apology to all law-abiding sportsmen should be given by you on your show, as I know this must have been an oversight by you and your staff. I hope that in the future, only law-abiding sportsmen will be emphasized on your show. Bob Garner.
It looks bad, Bob.
Those were my
from-
reports.
from the UP.
But what that person didn't know, and some of our other viewers didn't know, that the 4 counties that border Wisconsin are all on Central Time. In other words, when it's 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, as called for in the digest, as the opening hours of shooting time, it's 6 Central Time. So in other words, I was up in the UP, we started hunting, we were in the woods by 6 o'clock, but conversely, we had to be out by 5 o'clock Central Time. It was 6 o'clock Eastern Time.
Merely a time zone problem that takes us off the hook. They were law-abiding sportsmen, and you will always see nothing but law-abiding sportsmen on the show.
Right.
But one thing I want to point out, that's Iron, Gogebic, Dickinson, and Menominee.
Okay, those are the 4 counties, and that's where Bob reported from. So I hope we clarified that.
Okay, here's a letter on muzzleloaders. I was very disappointed in your shows regarding deer hunting. Also, I'm disappointed in the DNR. Your comments were pointed at the rifle and bow hunters with very, very little said about the black, powder, cap, and ball muzzleloaders. Nothing was said about the muzzleloader season, only 10 days, no doe permits, nothing. As a muzzleloading hunter, I have to pay the same as other hunters for my license and have no chance for a doe permit unless I hunt during the rifle season. I don't think this is quite fair and would like to see the DNR give us the same chance as the rifle hunters. Give us a fair shake.
Well, Keith, I've answered this in our Club Digest, which is going to be mailed out on Monday and Tuesday to everybody. I answered your letter there, that muzzleloaders really have a fair shake. You can use your muzzleloader rifle during the regular gun season. If you draw a permit then, it's also good for the muzzleloading season, which starts tomorrow.
The antlerless permits,
Right, the antlerless permits tomorrow through, is it 11th?
11th.
11th. So you have 10 extra days of hunting. We don't emphasize it too much here on Michigan Outdoors. It's a short, special season, but we'll probably get around to some more muzzleloading stories in the future.
And for those people out there that have unfilled deer tags, if they have a muzzleloader, they don't have to buy an extra license. They can go out on their gun deer license if they have an unfilled tag.
That's quite an advantage, and believe me, this year, I wish I could get a muzzleloader real quick. I wish I could. But it does take some skill and practice and knowledge of what you're doing with the muzzleloader, so nobody run out and get one real quick unless you really know what you're doing. But before we get to a wildlife photographer who I've known for many years, the best footage that you fellows are, in fact, you folks, you haven't seen anything like this from a Michigan wildlife photographer. We're going to do that in just 1 minute, but first, we want to honor some buck hunters who got their first deer in our Michigan Outdoors Trophy Report. It's amazing how many young hunters bag a buck their first year hunting. Dean Maida from Pinconning did just that using a 35-pound bow and a game tracker. He was hunting with his dad and 2 brothers opening weekend north of St. Helens. Nice little 6-point. Congratulations, Dean. You know, here's a couple of hunters who've spent many years in the woods pursuing whitetails. Paul Rzuski from Bay City on the right with a smaller 8-point and his nephew Alan on the left with a larger 8-point said that after 8 years of hunting, they finally got their first deer, both of them on opening day. They were hunting only 30 miles from home, and after 8 years, I'd say these 8 points were well deserved. But the fellow who has worked the hardest and spent more time in a blind without success is Ken Drelter from Fowlerville. 16 years he's been bow hunting, countless hours in blinds and sitting in trees. Finally, this year, he took his first buck with a bow, a 7-point that dressed out 158 pounds. He's having the head mounted, and I'm sure Ken will enjoy many venison meals from this buck. So congratulations to all of our first-timers on this Michigan Outdoors Trophy Report. Tom Sterling is his name, and wildlife photography is his game. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Fred.
You are one of the best wildlife photographers in the country, without a doubt. I was a judge on the International Wildlife Foundation's Film Festival a few years ago, and we
Yes,
saw
you were.
films from all over the world.
Yep.
None of them topped yours in
Thank you.
photographic quality. A lot of our viewers haven't seen your work, though. You're on a lecture circuit around the country.
Yep.
Go all over the U.S.
And Canada.
and Canada, and you live in Jackson.
Yep.
You have one of your rare performances here in Michigan coming up in just a few days in Lansing. So we want you to know about this, but we're going to give you a taste of what this man, Tom Sterling, can do with a motion picture camera and wildlife. So let's go to that film now. It's from your marsh film.
Right. The film is titled The Marsh, A Quiet Mystery. And this particular sequence begins in midwinter. And I think really to understand wetlands and marshes, it's a good idea to start in midwinter. It's a hard time of the year for wildlife. This doe, of course, she's come down to the edge of the pond where she's got a small muskrat hole that she's getting a drink from.
They can't eat snow?
Oh, they can eat the snow, but if they can find open water, they'll go for that first. Sure. Now, the coyote, in the winter months, he prowls the edge of the marsh and the marsh itself, listening for the squeaks of field mice beneath the snow, which he feeds on. And of course, the doe, she's interested in the coyote, but at the same time, she's not that worried about him because she's in good condition, and he's not really on her menu. Or she's not on his menu at this time of the year.
Because she's too large.
She's in good shape. She's in very good shape. Now, the lifelessness of winter is basically an illusion. The marsh is in reality a giant biological engine that simply runs at an idle during the winter months. Evidence of this fact is readily noticeable when the temperatures drop below zero. Decaying plant and animal life produce both gases and heat. On a quiet sub-zero morning, this warm air can be seen as it escapes the mantle of snow.
That's why you see it around the lowlands.
That's right. The temperature dropped below the dew point last night, producing a phenomenon known as hoarfrost. And this in turn covered the vegetation with a tiny ice crystal layer. The ice crystals also add sparkle to the high bush cranberry, which you'll find around the edges of the marshes.
What eats the high bush cranberry? Songbirds? Or?
Wintering birds, sure. Not so much the chickadee, he's basically a seed eater, but you'll find a lot of the birds that overwinter will use those berries. This fellow, he's not really usually associated with marshlands, but I did stumble across him one day out on the marsh, and of course, as soon as he saw me, he sought refuge in this small shrub. You might notice, of course, it's an opossum, and they have a prehensile tail.
The black tip looks like it was frozen.
It's been frozen. The possum is a South American animal that's worked its way up across North America, and it's done quite well, but has not evolved a furry coat to protect its ears, toes, and tail. Now, with the advent of spring, one of the first arrivals in this area will be the whistling swans. They wintered on Chesapeake Bay during the winter months, and in the spring they head up through Michigan. They'll stop over here, but they continue on north to the Arctic Circle and the Arctic Barren Country in northern Canada, where they'll nest. Now, the swan uses its big feet to stir up the bottom sediments, and then sifts the bottom material through its bill for pieces of vegetable matter. Of course, one swan is always alert for danger while the other one feeds. And this, by the way, of course, is obviously a mated pair.
They mate for
Now,
life?
yes, they stick together. What distinguishes the whistling swan from the trumpeter swan is that yellow spot on the bill. That's the main distinguishing mark between the two birds at a distance. Of course, the trumpeter is a bigger bird, but you wouldn't know that unless you saw them standing side by side. Now, the open water is also an attractant for these common goldeneyes, which have just arrived from the Gulf Coast. Now, the goldeneyes are divers. They don't hesitate to plunge beneath the ice to probe the bottom for crayfish and insects. The need for air will send them popping back to the surface within 5 to 10 seconds.
Now, were all of these scenes shot in Michigan?
Yep. This is all within about 20 miles of my home in Jackson.
Huh.
Yep. Now,
Except for this.
the coyote?
Yeah.
Oh, the coyote shot right here in Michigan. Sure.
But I mean, this wasn't around Jackson.
Sure. Oh, yes.
You're kidding me.
No, I'm not kidding you. There have been several coyotes killed right in Jackson
Well, I know
County.
that. I know
Sure,
that, but
sure. Now, the coyote prowls the fringe of the marsh, and he's looking for, of course, the dead animals don't make it through the winter, etc. But his arrival sends the golden eyes aloft and on their way north. These are cavity nesters that nest further north.
you know, people just don't realize, like myself, what it takes to get these shots in terms of film and time and your biological knowledge.
It helps. It all helps.
Oh, boy.
Yes. Now, one of my favorite animals is not really a marsh animal, but you will find him in the large oak trees around the edge of the marsh. Of course, it's our neighborhood fox squirrel. I've always been a big fan of these little guys. In fact, I'm currently doing a film right now on the squirrels of North America and the different races and color phases. And this is a blonde fox squirrel, which you will sometimes find in this area. But because it's blonde and light-colored, it's readily noticed by predators and very lucky if they survive.
Well, every squirrel has trouble surviving.
Yeah, but if you don't blend in well with your surroundings, you have even more trouble.
Picked off early.
Right. Yeah. Now, this is one of my favorite residents of the marshlands. This animal is really unique to this area. Not as much now as it was a few years ago because their populations are going up a little bit. This is the greater sandhill crane. These birds nest here in the Jackson County area, Washtenaw County, Calhoun County. They are now spreading over into other neighboring counties and over into Ontario and northern Michigan.
And there you are, sneaking into the marsh once again.
Yep, to watch the cranes in the morning.
We watched about 5 minutes of this film, folks. And how long is your marsh film?
It's an hour and a half long.
Well, you can see what kind of fantastic photography that you have in your knowledge of the subject, and especially this is a Michigan film. How many lecture films do you have?
I have 7 right now.
7 complete programs.
7 complete programs.
And you know, doggone it, you have not been used by clubs and things enough in this state. You know, for lecture circuits and fundraisers, I'm going to do a little pitch for him right here. He has phenomenal photography, phenomenal programs, and you're available.
Yep.
Right?
Always.
For clubs and groups, you can
Sure.
work out a fundraiser or whatever. Well, you can
Sure.
contact us here at Michigan Outdoors, and we'll get you hooked up with Tom, because this is the type of thing. I like to do TV. You get out there in the communities and we'll explain to people about
Sure.
nature. You hunt and
Sure.
fish too, don't you?
Yeah, I bet. You bet. Yep.
Okay, well, we're going to have Tom back. In fact, if one of you clubs out there, groups, books him, I can get him back on the show to show a little piece of it because it's great stuff. Ed, come on in here. You know, we have a lot of fish recipes on this show, and a lot of people love fish just straight, Ed. But some people like that embellishment almost better than
Like
the fish.
me, tartar sauce.
Tartar sauce. You've taped a recipe this summer
Right.
up at Houghton Lake. Let's take a look at it right now. This is a great one.
Well, we've brought you a lot of fish recipes on Michigan Outdoors, but you know, one thing we haven't really tried is a tartar sauce recipe. We've got Pam Reed here who has an excellent recipe, one that, well, it's far better than anything I've been able to come up with, so let us see what the ingredients are, okay?
Basically, I just sort of make it up as I go along.
Those are always the best.
Right, I try to just make enough for the time when we're going to have the fish.
Okay,
I
so this
would
would be
say
enough for a couple of people.
Probably, or, you know, depending. I usually, probably about, that's about half a cup, and I use the Hellman's.
Hellman's mayonnaise.
Hellman's mayonnaise.
All right.
And then I put some regular pickle relish.
Okay, now
This
so
is-
far this is pretty normal, I'd say, for tartar sauce, people
Right,
trying tartar sauce.
Right. I usually get a little bit of the juice with it, too. That kind of helps.
All right,
Then I just take a little tiny bit of lemon juice.
lemon juice. Gives it that tangy
Just
flavor.
gives it a little tang. Mix that up.
Okay, and I see you have here some nature seasoning. So just
Nature
some kind of a seasoning blend.
Right, it's just a seasoning blend you can buy at the grocery store.
Okay,
And I
can I
just
sprinkle
stick a
some in
little
there?
bit of that.
How much we put in there?
Oh, that's good.
Okay,
Just kind of
so-
enough to flavor it. A lot of times you have to taste it as you're going because it's kind of hard to get it. And then now, something new I've put in, I realize this kind of cuts, you know, you've got lemon, and then I put a little bit of sugar in it.
Now this is what might make it a little more mild than a lot of tartar sauces.
It's strong with the lemon, so I just put probably maybe 1/4 of a teaspoon of sugar,
All right,
and I stir that in there.
and that's it?
And that's it.
Well, I gotta taste this. Let me taste
Okay.
this. That's it. And that's the best tartar sauce that I've
thank you.
ever tasted homemade.
You're going to want to put that recipe on file for all the ice fishing we're going to be doing this winter on Michigan Outdoors. And next week, we're going to cap deer season with our big buck night. So don't miss it. Join us right here for Michigan Outdoors.